Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. We're here for the Q&A series. I guess you'd have to call this the Human Malware Special Quarantine Edition, because as you can see, Steve's not actually here in my studio. We are doing this remotely, and we've got virtual Steve. So say hi, Steve.
I'm a monitor. Yep. Hello.
So hopefully this is all working nicely and everything's smooth. All the audio quality is working, and yeah, I guess this is just the way the world is right now. It's a bit strange with everything going on, but we're still getting the Q&As out because, well, we've got technology. So it's pretty straightforward to do this sort of stuff, and yeah, interesting times.
We can make it work, or we think we can make it work. I don't know. We'll see how this turns out.
Yeah, I'll have to leave some comments below what you think of this virtual Steve setup on this LG monitor here. But yeah, we've got plenty of questions to get through today. We've got lots of YouTube questions, and then there'll be, of course, the usual multi-part series. So this is part one, there'll be a second part, and then we'll do a third Patreon part. So yeah, lots of stuff to get through, and let's get to the questions.
Okay, time for the first question, and I'm going to read this one out. And one of the perks of this setup is I have a nice big monitor to read off, so I have to get my phone out. So I think you're still using the phone, aren't you, Tim?
That's right, still here, all good.
So anyway, I'll read the first question off my nice big monitor here. How much do you think human malware is going to delay/limit the release of Nvidia 30 series, PS5 and Xbox Series X? So what do you reckon, Tim?
It's, again, with all this stuff, it's really up in the air at the moment. We really have no idea how long these sort of delays and everything are going to be, how much shutdown there's going to be around the world. Mm-hmm. I think one of the more promising things for at least like Nvidia 3000 series is that part still seems like it's quite some time away. Mm-hmm. And it also has the benefit of being mostly manufactured in sort of the Asia region, like maybe the chips will be TSMC, which is Taiwan, maybe they'll be manufactured in China or somewhere like that, which at the moment it sounds like the situation is improving a little bit there, and certainly it's not as locked down as it is here in Australia at the moment. So with like a far away product that is being manufactured in those regions, I wouldn't think the delays would be too much. But for your PS5 and Xbox Series X, that's another question entirely, because those could be sooner and could be manufactured and rely on a bunch of different components from different regions. So those could be impacted, but it's really a changing situation, every sort of day. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
We're sitting here doing a Q&A remotely. Who knows whether we'll be still doing this in 6 months? I mean, it's really strange times, but there'll certainly be an impact, I would think. Would you recommend buying a 5700 XT over a 2070 Super right now, considering the improvements to the AMD drivers, or is it still worth that extra £100 or dollars for the green team? What do you reckon?
Well, if I was to answer this from my own little insulated bubble, I would definitely get the 5700 XT because, as Tim and I have both said numerous times now, I've not had a problem still with the 5700 XT. I play a lot of Fortnite and a few other games with my daughters. They have 5700 XTs as well because I bought so many of the bloody things. And we've not had problems with them. So for me, it's a great value product and I highly recommend it. However, a lot of people were reporting driver issues, which is why we sort of looked into it and made a few polls and spoke with AMD. I think for the most part they're now solved. People using multi-monitors still report problems. That's not something we've really tested. So I think if you definitely want to use more than one monitor, I'd get a 2070 Super just to be on the safe side. But otherwise, yeah, the 5700 XT has been great for me. So that's what I personally would buy and save the 100-ish US or pounds or whatever it is.
Yep.
What about you, Tim?
Yeah, like you say, I've also not experienced any issues with my 5700 series cards. I don't use them as much of a daily driver as you do. But yeah, still no issues here. So yeah, I think that's all fair.
All right, next question. With the current economic conditions, which can result in a Great Depression, does it actually make sense to release new generation products this year? Like who is going to buy these upcoming processor or GPUs if our buying power is reduced massively? So pretty interesting question there. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, it's one of those things with the whole human malware situation. It's really hard to sort of say what the world's going to look like in 6 months and sort of try and predict the future. It's just things changing so frequently with these sort of things. I think the the companies are kind of in a difficult position because a lot of the product cycles have already been set in stone, years in advance with GPUs and processors specifically. The architectures have been locked in years ago. They've already bought the manufacturing capacity at their, AMD, for example, has to buy a certain amount of manufacturing at TSMC. So that's already locked in. And TSMC, as far as I know, is still manufacturing chips. So I think they've kind of, on one hand, got no choice but to keep releasing products as they see fit. Otherwise, they'll run into like a compressed timeline in the future, which will be no good. But it could affect something like pricing. I think that could be an area where we see things change up if people aren't buying as many chips.
Yeah, it's a difficult position for them. Obviously, not an ideal time if you want to maximize sales, but as you say, they really have no choice. They can't just hit the pause button and keep selling what they've got now because they're already developing the next products to come out, not the ones that will be coming out this year, but ones that will be coming out, years down the track. So I think they've just got to press on and hope for the best, really, and basically do what they have to do to make it work.
Yeah, and you might run into situations where, like, if one company decides to hit the pause button, then their competitor decides not to, and then they lose an advantage that they might have otherwise had. So I think as we sort of discussed here, there really won't be too much impact to these sorts of things. It just, from what we're sort of hearing from companies and talking to them about either getting samples in or what they're doing with these sort of things, it's just causing delays and issues with sort of getting things out and getting them into the market. But companies are still very keen on pushing out their latest products as soon as they can because they still want to get stuff they've worked on out. So
and I think although it is a global thing and we're talking about a Great Depression type situation, and again, I'm just speculating here, but it seems like some regions are already recovering. Some will recover quicker than others. The impact in other regions won't be as great. So I'm not sure the global impact will be the same, basically. Or I don't know. If you get what I mean there, probably didn't explain that super well, but anyway.
We'll give you a break because you're being in a monitor for now. So. All right, so we've got two questions here about the storage that is sort of one of the key features of the new consoles. There's going to be a lot of console-related questions. It's kind of a hot topic. So we'll go through both of these and then Steve and I will have a bit of a discussion on this. So the first question is, with the upcoming PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X having NVMe storage, do you think that NVMe storage will become essential for a smooth experience in games released once the upcoming consoles are launched? And the second question is, with Microsoft and Sony going all in on SSDs, does this mean the end for hard drives in PCs for game libraries? Will our Steam libraries need to be on SSDs, possibly even on NVMe interface SSDs? It's kind of hard to say. I think there's kind of two ways they could go with this. It's like, with SSDs, are they just going to be cutting out load times? In which case, maybe if you run off a hard drive, you're going to just get loading screens, or a slow SSD will see loading screens. Or will they actually try and load more geometry and textures directly off the storage? So then, your texture streaming is going to be way worse on a hard drive. You'll be trying to move around the environment, and suddenly things are popping in left, right, and center because you don't have fast enough storage. So how do you see that sort of playing out?
Honestly, I have no idea. Really, we'll have to wait and see. I don't think there'll be much change initially. I don't think it's going to be something where the new consoles come out and all of a sudden you need really fast PC storage. I don't think that'll be the case. But we'll just have to wait and see. I'd be shocked, really, if your sort of SATA SSD wasn't good enough. But it depends on how they change the way games work, really. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, loading games off hard drives as it is can be quite painful for some games that have like very long loading screens. So I think right now you'd say we wouldn't advise running games off a hard drive, as is like if you had your library hard drive, you'd want to move it to an SSD if you're actually going to play it.
If you're going to play the game, yes. Any games I'd be playing at the moment, I would be putting on my faster storage, and then your games library, if you don't want to download that, just keep that on your hard drive. So I don't think there's a huge, say, your PCIe for NVMe SSDs, your absolute fastest NVMe SSDs. I don't think there's a big difference between those and current SATA drives for sustained read-write performance. So certainly nothing you're really going to notice when playing games. So I'd be surprised if if that situation changed drastically. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on sort of, the console manufacturers have said, I think the Xbox was targeting like 2.5 gigabytes per second raw performance. The PS5 was more like 5 gigabytes per second. But that doesn't tell you a lot about sort of the random performance, the sustained performance. That's just looking at peak throughput. So
yeah,
it's really unclear, are they using like a lower end SSD? Because even today, like an Intel 660p is an NVMe PCI 3.0 drive. It's pretty fast and it's quite cheap, but it doesn't necessarily have the performance of, say, a Samsung 970 Pro or something. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be more of a determining factor, but how high you need to go is completely up in the air. All right, Steve, Monitor Steve, we got a question for you here. Why did you stop including id Tech 6 games to your 35 games benchmarks, but have a ton of Unreal Engine 4 ones? So, what's going on with your game selection?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure on that one. I had to quickly go back. I saw this question, went back and did a bit of research. I last used Wolfenstein Youngbloods back in December. I've done a few videos since then and haven't used it. And I don't really have an answer for why that is. I guess we just added some new games and things get shuffled around. I can certainly add it back. We've obviously got Doom now, which we can add back into the mix as well. I don't think we had any other games apart from Wolfenstein, though. So I think it was just a game that we stopped including. There's also World of Tanks, which has been absent from the last few videos, which I'll add back. A few people want that back, so that'll get added back. But yeah, I mean, there are quite a few Unreal Engine games just because there are a huge amount of Unreal Engine 4 games. But in the 35 game, or 30-ish, I think there's 32 games we're working with at the moment. It's always somewhere between 30 and 40. There's still a wide variety of game engines there, but it's an ever-changing list. But yeah, I didn't actually realize I dropped that, so whoops. Yeah, we'll probably add that back, or at least, as I said, we're getting Doom now as well, so that's an interesting game to add to the list.
I think
anyway,
it does determine. We do choose the games that we use based on sort of what's popular at the moment. I think Wolfenstein Youngblood, which was the most recent id Tech 6 game, you would have to say wasn't super popular. It was kind of mediocrely received, I guess, and the previous one, what was it? Wolfenstein 2 was probably more popular, and then Doom as well. So
sure,
there's older games now, so we just try to keep things up to date.
Yeah, I didn't make any notes at the time, so I honestly have no idea why it's not there anymore. I think Tim may be onto it. I think also because the last time I did test it with like a 5700 series graphics card, you were looking at over 200 FPS at 1080p and really solid frame rates at 1440p. So the fact that it wasn't really pushing modern hardware that hard, and it isn't a super popular title, and generally if a game doesn't get included, no one requests it to be included, then we sort of just let that one sort of slide. World of Tanks, though, lots of requests to have that added back. I think maybe some reasons why games disappear is because there's a big update and I have to do a lot of testing to add it back. And that happened in the case of World of Tanks, so I've just got to catch up there, and I will do that when we get a chance. But yeah, it wasn't deliberately removed, I don't think, to certainly not to give one company an advantage or anything like that, which is what some people seem to suggest when game lineups change a bit. But anyway. All right, question here for Tim. So I'll read this one out for you, Tim.
Sounds good.
Looks like you've got two to tackle here.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on OLED TVs like the LG C9? Well, that was a super short product name there.
Good job, LG.
Yeah, as a 120Hz HDR capable alternative to 4K gaming monitors. Would you consider reviewing one as if it were a monitor?
Okay,
so reviewing the TV as a gaming monitor.
Yeah, let's tackle that one first, get to the second part in a moment. Yeah, I mean, I have an OLED TV. I have an LG B8, so that's the previous generation and sort of the more entry-level market. It uses the same sort of panel as the C8. Obviously, the C9 is a bit newer, and I do some gaming on it, mostly with consoles. As I mentioned before, I do play console games. Steve's a bit more of a PC-only type guy, which is fine. And
Master Race.
It's a really good gaming like TV. Like, it's high refresh rate if you plug a PC in. It has HDR, like really good quality HDR, not your fake HDR, not your full array local dimming. It's got per pixel local dimming. The HDR in games on it looks incredible. So I really like it. Would I consider reviewing one? It's tough because firstly, they're really big. So my testing setup doesn't necessarily accommodate like a 55-inch TV super well. And it'll just depend on sort of the interest in that sort of thing. How many people are buying like a TV as to use as a PC gaming monitor, because we're sort of PC focused, we'd have to sort of take that angle. And, how easy is it to actually get one? They're very expensive to buy. That's only going to get worse with the sort of currency situation we're facing. Is LG willing to supply one? I don't know. So I'd certainly be interested in doing more of a look into OLED TVs for gaming, but I don't think it'd be happening too often.
Okay, fair enough. And you ready for number 2?
Let's go number 2.
For consumers wanting to use their monitors for both PCs and consoles, so kind of like what you do, is it worth refraining from buying any monitors until they include HDMI 2.1?
It's hard to say on that one. It's another one of those sort of do you buy now, do you wait sort of questions. I think I'm not sure how much adoption there will be for HDMI 2.1 on monitors as a whole, simply because we already have DisplayPort, which does a lot of the things that HDMI 2.1 is set to provide. Like, it already has better bandwidth than HDMI 2.0, so DisplayPort can run you higher resolutions, higher refresh rates. And HDMI 2.1 could also be quite an expensive thing for a monitor to include, so they might stick to just using DisplayPort, which would of course make it, not great for an upcoming console that has HDMI 2.1 output. So it's hard to say whether I would refrain from buying it, because it might be a situation where that's something that won't happen for years. So I would just stick to sort of dealing with your HDMI 2.0 for now and DisplayPort for PC. And yeah, you might not get variable refresh for the time being, but yeah, I certainly wouldn't be waiting out for something that we don't even know is sort of going to be coming to monitors anytime soon.
All right, the next one is, will you be attempting to benchmark the new consoles when they come out? I only ask because of how powerful they supposedly are. They're stronger than 99% of our PCs, or of PCs. Assuming Microsoft and Sony aren't lying through their teeth about the performance of the consoles. So I don't have much interest in consoles. I wouldn't be getting them and playing around them and benchmarking them, just because that's never anything I've been interested in, and I've been doing this job for almost 2 decades now, so probably not going to start now. The new spec announcement, all that hasn't got me excited at all, apart from what it could mean for PC gaming, I suppose. What about you, Tim? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, as far as benchmarking goes, it's not really the focus of our channel. We'd more leave that to sort of your Digital Foundry type channels to look at all that sort of stuff. I'll probably will end up buying one, just because I like playing console games. Some of the exclusives there are quite good, so I'll probably do that. But I think, you mentioned in this comment about how they're supposedly more powerful than 99% of PCs. I think while that's true now, it might not necessarily be true when the consoles come out or shortly after when they come out. If we're talking about like a $500 game console providing 2080 Ti type performance, as is supposedly the case, then it's quite likely that that sort of GPU will quickly become a mid-range or entry-level product. As ridiculous as it might sound today to say a 2080 Ti will become a mid-range entry-level product, but we're talking like a $500 console, like likely price, we don't know just yet. I mean, that's going to mean cheaper GPUs for everyone. So, yeah, I mean, it might be an option for people in a very short window of time if they really want their high-performance type stuff to get this sort of console for a little bit and get the best performance. But I think very quickly we'll see PCs regain the lead as that hardware becomes available for cheap in sort of your PC form factors.
Yeah, I think that's generally how this plays out, isn't it?
I think it's what happened last time with the PS4 and stuff. Was about when it came out, it was about the performance of the AMD's mid-range GPUs at the time, mid-range to low-end GPUs. Might be a bit different these days if they're going for like a higher price point. But I would expect that sort of situation to happen very quickly, and which is good news for us, being PC people. Will
human malware
affect the stock for next-gen CPU and GPUs? And if yes, will the price be affected too? What do you think?
Well, I think we sort of touched on this a bit earlier, didn't we? It's really hard. Well, I mean, this is such a difficult thing to talk about because the
human malware
situation is changing.
I'll have to censor you on that one.
the human malware situation is changing basically daily at this point. We really have no idea where we're going to be in a week, a couple of weeks, a month, a few months. So really an impossible question to address.
It's hard to say on the stock levels because you never know what manufacturing is like, how they're able to like ship stuff to different countries and what the situation is there. But I think we have already seen a little bit of the price being affected, but it's not necessarily from stock being low. It's from the currencies tanking. Like in Australia, our Australian dollar has taken a nosedive compared to the US dollar, which has caused price increases for a lot of PC components simply because when the retailers are buying their next shipment and they're buying it in US dollars, which is quite common, now suddenly the Aussie dollar is worth less. So they have to spend more, makes the prices go up.
There was also the interruption to supply as well for a period there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. It's impossible to say with that one. Is the jump from 1080p 24-inch to 27-inch 1440p really noticeable in gaming? Well, what are you laughing at? You haven't turned my monitor around, have you?
No.
Okay, so sort of answer that in two parts, and they're both the same thing. So first of all, in my opinion, it'll be interesting to see what Tim thinks after this, I would say the jump from 24 inches to 27 inches, leaving resolution completely out of it, so say it's the same monitor, I much prefer a 27-inch monitor. I find 24 inches just to be too small, especially since my editing rig monitor is 32 inches. So 27 inches is a pretty good size for gaming. So already just the step up in screen real estate, I think, is massively noticeable. And then the improvement from 1080p to 1440p in terms of visual quality, I also think is massive. So getting a bigger screen with a higher resolution, I think, is really very noticeable in gaming. Like a substantial upgrade to the gaming experience. What do you think, Tim?
I totally agree with you. That's sort of why I was smiling before, because the question sort of phrases, is it really noticeable? And it's like, absolutely 100% yes, it is super noticeable.
Yeah.
The size thing for me, it's hard to say because it depends how close you've got your monitor as well, what your eyesight's like, because some people can deal with a smaller, closer monitor. I tend to prefer larger, generally speaking. I use an ultra-wide, as I've mentioned many times on the channel before, so 24 inches seems like using a postage stamp compared to the real estate you get from an ultra-wide that's sort of 27-inch height, but obviously much wider.
Yep.
And then, the resolution jump. A lot of people also ask about like 1440p to 4K, and that's like a much smaller jump than going from 1080 to 1440. It's just massive in terms of the detail, especially with games these days that have such high resolution textures. Like if you play a modern game, like even something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I guess is still a modern game, the texture quality in that game is really impressive, and you just don't see it on a 1080p monitor compared to 1440p. So it is a big jump. The downside, obviously, then is what's your performance going to be like? Because it's potentially you could be going from high FPS, high refresh rate 1080p to sort of more your 60 FPS or lower 1440p, depending on the GPU you have. So there is obviously a trade-off there in terms of performance and how that affects how smooth and fluid your gameplay is. But I think that decrease can be offset by changing your visual quality settings, and it's just worth it. It's just worth it overall for all those areas.
Okay, next question here. Would you rather upgrade an SSD or RAM? If the answer is RAM, is it worth upgrading from 2666 to 3000 for Ryzen 5 3600? Prices of PC parts have been increasing too much, and I can't afford both. Well, this is one of those it depends answers. I feel like we give those a lot in the queue. We need to make some Harbour Unboxed merch that just says it depends. This one, it depends on a number of things. So first of all, I guess my first question would be, are we upgrading from a hard drive to an SSD? Or because it sort of, I guess the way that this question's phrased, it sort of sounds like you're just upgrading to an SSD. Is that how you'd interpret that, Tim?
I mean, it's hard to say. It could be wanting
if it's
extra
from
capacity.
Okay,
I don't know.
Well, I'll give two examples. If it's from, say, a SATA SSD to an NVMe SSD, then I probably wouldn't worry about the SSD. If it's from a hard drive to an SSD, absolutely get the SSD because it's the single most important component for boosting your performance of your computer. Like going from a hard drive to an SSD in 2020 is just Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane. Especially with a Ryzen 5 3600. That would be your biggest bottleneck by a country mile. The RAM, from 2666 to 3000 for Ryzen. Look, it can give you extra performance. It depends on how CPU limited you are. So I suppose the type of games you play, the quality settings, are you targeting high refresh rate, or are you going for more visual quality? Again, it depends on the GPU you're using. So are you using an RTX 2080 Ti, or are you using maybe an RX 580? So the RAM's probably not that important. And also I'd probably go for like 3200 CL16 stuff, since 3200 is the official sort of spec. That's the starting point for 3rd gen Ryzen. So there's a lot of it depends there. But if you've already got an SSD, then probably get some better memory. But even that may be wasting your money, because as I said, it depends on the games you play, the graphics card you've currently got, and all that sort of stuff. So probably in future, when you guys ask these questions, maybe give us a bit more information about your current specs, and then we can address them a bit better for you. Anything else to add to that, Tim?
Yeah, I think as well, I was just going to add that it really depends on the capacity that you're dealing with as well. Like if you've got a tiny SSD, then you might want to upgrade to like 512, 1 terabyte or whatever, and that might be more worth it for you than upgrading just the performance of your of your memory. Whereas say you have only 8 gigabytes of RAM and you really want to get 16 gigabytes, and that's the difference between that or buying a larger capacity SSD, then it might make more sense to get more RAM. It's just, with these sort of things, there's so many different variables going on to depend on what sort of upgrade you want to make. But it really depends on the balance of your system in the end. All right, we're going to take a pause on the questions there. That was a pretty good selection, but too many to cover in just the one video. So we will be back for a part 2, probably in the next couple of days. Not quite sure the schedule of when this is going out, but there will be a part 2 soon. So stay tuned for that. Everything okay on your end, Steve? All the questions been good so far?
Yep, I think we're going well here. I'm interested to see how this all comes together when you're finished editing it. But
yeah, I think it should be fine.
Monitor Steve is happy so far.
All right, nice. What else? Got all the usual stuff. We just did our Patreon Q&A. Well, not Q&A, but live stream. So if you're not a Patreon member, go sign up for that. Links will be in the description below to all that sort of thing. Of course, subscribe to get the other segments coming to you shortly. And I guess that does it. So both of us, we will both catch you in the next one. How strange.
I'm Monitor Steve. Who are you?
I'm Tim, I guess.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah,
good job.
Nice.
All right.
Let's see. Let's go.